Okay, we're going to get started. Oh, I have to. Okay, so this is being recorded for the people who aren't here. So for those of you who are here, thank you. Every time I open up my email today, one more person was saying that they were sick. So I'm going to stop checking my email because every time I do, someone else is saying they're not coming. But thank you to all of you for coming. Thank you to Holland and Knight, to Carl and Yusuf, and Vivian, and then Lisa. Where's Lisa? She's not in here. They were so nice to offer to host this. So thank you very much. And Vivian, I think you're going to say a couple words. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our home, Holland and Knight. I am so happy to see as many of you here, and I'm so happy to see some H&K lawyers here, Daisy and Brianna. This is really an exciting opportunity, and again, I just want to express my gratitude for each of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come in for this training. We are really, really committed to diversity, and I know each of you are because you're here. And in its inaugural year, it's Amy. Don't worry, we planned this. We planned it. It's fine. It's just, to break up the, awkwardness. But I really want to thank each and every one of you for coming here to participate in this training. I think what we are doing is really, really important and significant because diversity, and especially in Los Angeles, it's just a way of life. It's not even something we need to talk about. And so I think to tap into the next generation, to help them get into law school in the first place, to then, propel them into law firms and being lawyers, whether it's government, small firms, big law. I love it. I love it because I'm going to be here for a long time. And I've been in a bunch of recruiter meetings today, so we were talking about how, wow, you know what? It's true. I really do care about my 529s more than my 401, which is oddly creepy. But to the extent that you guys are going to be mentoring the next generation of lawyers, I think that's really meaningful. It's special, and it's so important because I think they're going to need all the help they can get, and they will be grateful for all of your expertise and just mentoring. So again, I'm so thankful and appreciative of each and every one of you being here. And we're happy to fill you up with snacks and beverages, adult and non. And I know we have a terrific program for you today. So if you have any questions, Carl is your man, but I will also be around. And thank you again.
Thank you so much. Carl, do you want to say a couple words?
No, I didn't. I just wanted to welcome you. Vivian, by the way, is the managing partner of our LA office here at Holland and Knight. So it's wonderful to have her here and have her support for this. But I'm also a partner here at Holland and Knight. So we're just welcoming you to our offices. So thank you so much. I don't want to take up too much more time. So Cindy, let's do this. Thank you.
I forget we're recording. Okay, so we're going to do a lot of sort of housekeeping, detail stuff, and then the bulk of today is training with Paula and Derek. So kind of bear with me. So how many of you have connected with your mentee somehow? Just raise your hand. So, okay, I'm sorry, okay, good. So for those of you who haven't, as you know, I encouraged them to reach out to you. I want them to get used to that. I have a feeling that for some of them, they just, even though they met a lot of you, they might be intimidated or they might feel like they're bothering you. I don't know. I'll find out next week when I ask them. We're going to have our first workshop. But feel free to reach out to them, whether it's by text, by email. But I'm glad. It seems like a lot of you have connected, so that's great. So what I want to do first is just go over the demographics that we talked about last week, but there's a couple of ones that I didn't say in front of them, and you'll see why. So this class is 33. There's 33 students. And the demographic is based on how they identify. So in their application, they were asked certain ways to identify themselves. So 30 out of 33 identified as first generation. 30 out of 33 identified as socioeconomically disadvantaged. 5 out of 33 identified as LGBTQ. And 32 out of 33 identified as a student of color. So it's obviously it's a very diverse group. In terms of where they are going to college or where they graduated from, 14 are from UCs, 7 are from Cal States, and 12 are from private colleges. And they're private colleges mostly in California. There's one, Farah, who went to Connecticut, but so most people are very local. In terms of their grades, so they're either juniors in college, seniors in college, or recent college grads. So for juniors, 36% are juniors, which means no gap year. They're going to apply this year. Oh my gosh, they're applying this year for next year. So they're not going to take a gap year. 21% are seniors, so they're going to be taking a gap year. And then 42% have already graduated. I didn't realize that when we were doing all the interviews and when we got done, I was very surprised at how many were already graduated. GPAs. So this is what I didn't talk about at the last week at the reception. So from 3.0 to 3.2, 27% are in that category. 3.3 to 3.5, 36%. And 3.6 to 4.0, 36%. So that means 72% are 3.3 and above. And I will tell you, as a board, we did discuss this at length as to what would be the cutoff for the GPAs. And it was decided, and Paula, you can kind of talk a little bit too, was decided to go to 3.0 because a lot of programs do not go to 3.0. I can tell you for sure, well, I can tell you, since we're recording, I'm not going to say what programs, but there are programs where the GPA is a lot higher. So we could be missing, the idea from the board is we could be missing some amazing students that we could help. So that's why we decided to do the 3.0. And I'm thinking I should probably, and I think I said this last week, I really should probably give all of you your mentees applications. Would you want them? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know. I guess that was kind of rhetorical. Because in it, you're going to see their demographics, but you're going to read their essays and read about their backgrounds, which are amazing. So I also just recently did a survey, and I'm going to be doing it with the mentors too, using SurveyMonkey. So I'm telling you this just so you can kind of get their mindset in how their confidence level right now. So we asked them about their confidence level in their LSAT test-taking abilities. 80% said not very confident, which I would have been one of those, by the way. I thought that was really high. So hopefully with the LSAT course that we're giving them, that will dissipate. Effective writing skills, 32% said they're not very confident. So this is where you'll come in because you're going to be doing a lot of working with them on writing. Knowledgeable about the law school admission process, 46% said either not confident or not very confident. Now this one is interesting and it makes sense considering the population. Using their legal education to affect social change, 47% extremely confident, 41% confident. So clearly that's not an issue. Oral advocacy skills. So this will be interesting to see if it really does match. 33% think they're very good. So we'll be able to see that and let them know whether they're correct or not. Then we did an open-ended question. What are you most looking forward to be a LEAP fellow? And out of the 32 answered. One of them, he's in Vietnam, so 32 answered. 15 of them said mentoring and networking. And obviously I'm telling you that for a reason. It is so important for them to have mentors. They are so excited to have an attorney mentor, to have a law student mentor. And I got feedback from them last week for our opening reception. And you might think the same thing. So this will be a note to self. They did not feel like they had that much time with you at all. They felt like they should have gotten information about you ahead of time, which I thought was a really good suggestion. So next year, we'll hand out, your names, where you work, the area of practice. But they loved it. So they love meeting you. So I thought that was amazing that at least half of them, this mentoring aspect is really important for them. So mentor expectations. So you have that sheet. There's a couple of different things that are very important in terms of what you'll be doing with them. So one, you're going to be helping them with their moot court competition. And so we'll talk about that later. And two, you're going to be helping them with their personal statement, their diversity statement, their resume. And that's where Paula and our other speaker, Derek, come in. But I also want to encourage you, if you're a lawyer that goes to court, take them to court. If you're in a bar association, take them to an event. I don't know what else you could take them to, and it's kind of up to you. But whatever you think is going to help them get a really good sense of what you do and what lawyers do would be great. When you first meet with them, you're gonna need to develop your own relationship with them in terms of how are you going to communicate? Is it going to be texting? Is it going to be email? Is it going to be Skype? That's going to be up to the two of you, or in some cases the three of you. You're going to talk about if there's issues, how are you going to resolve them? If there are issues and hopefully all these matches work out, but I've done mentoring long enough to know sometimes you just kind of get it wrong in terms of the match. And if that happens, please let me know. This is what I don't want to happen. I don't want in September at the end of the fellowship to get an email from one of you to say, you know what, our relationship didn't work, because that's just not going to be helpful. So for some reason, and I hope this doesn't happen, if there is an issue, please let me know, and hopefully we can resolve it. I'm curious as to how many of you have been mentors before, and I don't mean informal. I mean like in a very formalized setting. Okay. So I'm going to go over a couple things. I know that this stuff is going to seem super obvious, but for people who have not been mentors, it might not seem that obvious. So, of course, you want to create a supportive and trusting environment. There's going to be things that you're going to talk about with them that are going to be kind of confidential, right? There's going to be things about their life that they might tell you, and if they tell you it's confidential, then of course it's confidential. But agreeing to scheduling uninterrupted time. So that means no phone, if you can. I know all of you are very busy. I know all of you still practice. Have I mentioned I'm retired and I'm digging it? Okay, just want to mention that. Have I mentioned I'm going to Miami on Saturday for the Super Bowl? Okay.
No, you're not.
Okay. So, actively listen, give feedback to them on their goals, on, any questions they have. Obviously serve as a positive role model. Be honest and open. Keep your discussions on track. Although I have a feeling for some of you, you're going to end up being friends with them. You just are. So, I know I'm involved in another organization, and I'm still friends with some of these young women who are now out of college or in grad school or even in law school. So just know that this might not be a relationship that ends in September. In fact, I think it would be great if it went beyond. But we're not asking you for beyond. I just want to make sure you know that. But just don't be surprised if you end up being really good friends with them. And I'm going to say this to them, really more to the mentees, but respect each other's time. I think, okay. Oh, again, stay off the phone. Okay. So let's talk about this curriculum, this very ambitious curriculum. We are not expecting you to come to all 8 workshops, and we're not expecting you, when you come to a workshop, to be there from 9 to 4. So in case you're looking at this and you're like, dear God, you do not have to do that. So let me tell you, though, the ones that we're really encouraging you, and when Paula and Derek talk, it'll make sense. We would really like you to come to March 7th, April 4th, May 23rd, and June 13th. So the 4 starting March 7th. Because you'll be working with your mentee on those specific documents when we're in the workshops. So it's March 7th, April 4th, May 23rd, June 13th. Now, if you can't come, because I've already had this question, so, let's say you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, I can't come, and so now my mentee is going to be working by him or herself. You won't, trust me, there'll be enough mentors that, let's say Lavinia can't be there, someone else will work with her mentor, with her mentee. So you don't have to worry about that. And then, as you can see, the time is 10 to 11:15. It's at Loyola Law School in the Hall of the 70s. If you're not familiar with the campus, when you go down the parking structure, it's the first white building off to your right. So those are the ones that we would really like you to come to. Now, there's a couple of modules that we are still looking for people. So I'm going to have you write this down, because you don't have to tell me now, but just in case, number one, you feel like you want to teach it, or you know people who can teach. So April 4th is under Module 5, demand letter, and I think we're just going to add discovery. We need someone for that. And let me just give you a little bit of background, by the way, on that for the lawyering skills. They're actually going to work with a problem. So there's a professor at Loyola, Professor Craig, who gave me this fact situation. They're going to be working with that fact situation, so it's a mock situation, during that whole module. So I'm realizing I should give that also to the mentors. So just kind of keep that in mind when we're talking about this module. So we need someone for demand letter. We need someone for June 13th for deposition. And you can see there it says mock. So they only need to teach for maybe 20 minutes, 25, and then we're going to actually do mock deposition or mock negotiation or mock client interview. And we're hoping that the law student mentors will come and either act as judges or act as clients. So, I mean, if you want to come, that's great. But as you can see, if you're coming to the 10 o'clock one, this module is not until 1:30. So again, I'm not expecting you to stay that whole time. So deposition, we also need someone for July 11th for the negotiation. So that's what we need in that module. Now, in this other module, I have a feeling that a lot of the big firm people are going to know people who can do this. So for that module, these are going to be panels every week. So on April 4th, I already have the woman who's general counsel for eBay. Super excited. I think she said yes. I just asked the general counsel for the 49ers for a variety of obvious reasons. I hope she says yes, and she's already, I have a girl crush already on her. I haven't even met her, because she has the perfect job. So I need a couple more people for April 4th. For June 13th, okay, so for the big law people, I already have Michelle. Oh, Michelle's not here. And did Carl leave? Oh, okay. So I have Carl, and you're doing this, right? Yeah. Okay. I need one more person from Big Law to be on that panel. And again, you don't have to tell me now, but just keep it in the back of your mind. That's on June 13th. I know it's a crummy time. It's 2:45 to 3:45. It's right in the middle of the day, but I had to put it somewhere. And then July 11th, Carl and Susan. I know, Carl, Susan's doing it with you, right? Right. So we need a couple more people for the corporate transactional business. And then on August 15th, we need a couple of people for entertainment panel. So these are people who we just need about 3 attorneys for each of those panels. Okay, any questions so far? I hope I'm not rambling on this recording. Okay, hi Jared. Okay, one of the things you need to do is add May 2nd, it's a Saturday, to this curriculum. So as you can see, April 4th to May 23rd is a big jump. So May 2nd, we are doing, and this was Yusuf's idea, actually. Thank you, Yusuf. We're going to be doing some sort of panel. It's going to be at Loyola from 10 to 12. And we don't know yet what exactly the subject, but it's going to be around diversity. But obviously it's going to be a little, we're going to think of something a little less broad than that. But so that's May 2nd. So my next favor, and again, you can email me later. I'm going to be. I can't even believe I'm saying this. I have a website, and on the website, there's going to be a blog. Okay, if you would have told me 6 months ago that I would be blogging, I'd be like, no, I am not. But apparently, for nonprofits to get traffic, for SEO, I'm learning all these things that I didn't know as a DAG. You need blogs. So I would love to have guest bloggers. So these are my guest bloggers. So if you feel like you have an expertise that would be interesting to our fellows, to our law students, to young lawyers who are just starting in their career, let me know. And what I'm really hoping is when I get home tonight, I have a bunch of emails from you saying, oh my gosh. So, and a blog, I mean, I know a lot of you know this. It's not very long. I mean, it's a couple paragraphs, so this wouldn't be a lot of work, but just, I would love to have some guest bloggers. Are you getting the newsletters? I sent one out yesterday or today, kind of made a little mistake on one, so I had to resend it. But I just want to make sure, I know some of you were not getting it, so I have to send it to your personal email, because I think some firms and probably some government agencies are blocking it because it's coming from SurveyMonkey. But I just want to make sure. Here's the reason why, besides the fact that there's going to be some good information. There's going to be times when I don't want to email you. There's like a bunch of stuff to tell you, and I don't want to do it in email. This newsletter, I can do videos, which are oh so fun. And so sometimes it's easier to say something in a minute rather than doing an email. So that's why. So I'm going to be using that platform. So I just want to make sure.
So where are the newsletters coming from? What's the address it's coming from?
So it should say my email, C Lopez, at Lawfellows, but then it might say blah 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 SurveyMonkey. So you can look in your spam, and then if it's not there, like Carl, I know actually Yusuf, you couldn't get it, right? So I can send it to your personal one if you wouldn't mind. Okay. Also, and then this is just another plug for social media. If you're on Facebook, there are legal pipelines on Facebook, on Instagram. It would be great to get some quality, good, engaged followers. I feel like, what am I missing? In about a few weeks, I'm going to be doing a fundraiser. I think I mentioned this. So I have Hamilton tickets. How many of you have not seen Hamilton? Have not seen it? Okay. So I have tickets for May 6th, and it's going to be a raffle, but it's going to be a fundraiser for LEAP. So you'll be buying, it'll kill two birds. But it's just the 2 tickets, we're going to sell the raffle. It's going to be $35. So if you buy 10 tickets, that will be awesome. But you'll find out either through email or through the newsletter, but just kind of be on the lookout for that. Okay. So I see that Derek is here. You're Derek?
Yes.
Okay. We have not met. So one of the cool things about starting this nonprofit is the amazing people who have come forward, like this law firm, all of you to help out. So Paula was not able to be at the reception last week, but she and I met over email, and she volunteered to be on the board. We had not met. I remember I was sitting at my office at the AG's office, and I'm like, I don't even know you, and she volunteered. So, and she's already done so much to help me. So I'm just going to read a little bit about her because both she and Derek have these very long, very impressive bios. But the reason why I'm telling you this is because I know if you go to a conference or a workshop and someone's teaching, I'm sure you're all like this. You want to know what gives them the right to get up here and teach, right? Like they have to have credibility. So I'm telling you that they have a lot of credibility. So Paula has over a decade of experience in legal practice and law school administration. She was Assistant Director of Admissions and Financial Aid at the University of Washington School of Law, and then later at a little law school we call UCLA. She has read hundreds of admission files. She's interviewed applicants. She's worked directly with candidates all over the country. So in addition to mentoring and advising pre-law students, she's also worked in career services, right? So she's getting both sides. She's getting admissions and career services. So that allowed her to bring full circle her perspective to this admission process. As an immigrant and the first in her family to attend law school, like many of our fellows, she's proactive in promoting diversity and inclusion in legal education and hiring. Paula understands the challenges involved in getting to law school and the value of knowledgeable mentorship through the admissions process. So that's Paula. So Derek, who I haven't met, apparently Paula told him about LEAP, and he, I guess, decided to help us out without meeting us. So that's awesome. I hope, do you like wine? Are you a wine drinker? I'm sorry, I'm recording this again. All right, sorry. So Derek is a nationally respected professional among law school admissions and career services deans. His 18 years of experience include serving as Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid for University of Pennsylvania Law School, little law school back east, as recruiting manager for a global law for Paul Hastings, and as an admissions reader for the University of Chicago Law School. Okay, that's all you need to know. As Dean of Admissions at Penn, he evaluated and made the final decision on every JD application, so over 6,000 per year. During his tenure, Penn Law received a record number of applications, significantly increased selectivity, and expanded need-based public service and merit scholarships programs. As a first-generation student from Appalachian, Ohio, and a member of the LGBTQ community, Derek is most proud of his legacy of increasing racial, sexual orientation, and socioeconomic diversity at Penn, and in helping to launch diversity scholarships at Paul Hastings. Okay, I could just keep reading on and on. You get the idea. They're both rock stars. So Paula and Derek, thank you so much for being here, and they're going to do the training.
So Cindy's awesome at not letting you know when she's going to read your bio out loud and make you red-faced. Thank you all so much for being here and for allowing me to speak on behalf of myself and Derek. We both work for a firm called Spivey Consulting Group, which is a private law school admissions consulting firm. I don't know if you all knew that existed. It's a fairly new thing, probably less than a decade old, where now people can actually outsource the information to actually have them help get their applications done for law school. I didn't have that. I wish I had that when I was applying to law school back in the day. But it's an incredibly rewarding experience, especially when we get to work with underrepresented candidates who really could just use a little bit of that knowledge and perspective. So when Cindy asked me to participate and become a part of LEAP, it was a no-brainer to be able to essentially take on 33 pro bono clients, so to speak, and help them get the best information as to how to prepare their law school applications. And I'm going to be doing that by proxy with you. Derek is a partner at Spivey Consulting who we lucked out that just moved back to LA. And so as I was welcoming back to the Best Coast, I also sort of let him know about about LEAP, and asked him to come and participate. So he will be participating much more in the future, but today he's sort of getting a little bit more of a understanding and introduction to LEAP, and obviously meeting the founder. So Cindy, Derek, Cindy. So the part that I'm going to be helping with specifically when it comes to the mentoring is enabling you to use your knowledge as law school applicants, whenever that was, as law students, whenever that was, and now the perspective that you have on the other side as bar licensed practicing attorneys, is to help your mentees create the best possible applications with every piece of material and document that needs to go into their application. And the mechanism of what we're going to be doing is essentially through the modules, the second module, Anatomy of a Law School Application, Derek and I will essentially be talking about those various components of the application during the workshops, and then carving out time within that hour frame that we have for them to actually work on those materials or those documents with their mentor. So if you can't be at a session, that's okay. This is something that you can do remotely with them. I will still provide you sort of the lesson or the instruction of what needs to go into, say, a resume, or what makes a strong personal statement, or how to write a solid diversity statement, which all of our candidates will be writing, or all of our fellows will be writing. But you have the beauty of the program, an entire month to maybe use that as a touch point with your mentor, to maybe meet with them for coffee and talk about their draft, or set up a Skype call where you can talk with them about, okay, so Paula talked about this element, let's do the brainstorming together, or where are you with your second draft, let's talk about that. So it's not something you have to do in person at the actual seminar that we're going to do, but it's something that you have over a month to actually work with them on it. So the way that it works is, during the first session on February 8th, which I don't think Cindy said is the one that we really want you in, we're going to be talking to them. Right, right.
You're welcome to everything.
We're not going to be doing any interactive one-on-one mentoring, working on a document, but I'm going to be essentially going over the application checklist with all the fellows, and talking a little bit more broadly in bird's eye view about what goes into, say, a resume and how it's different or why it's important, diversity statement, personal statement, so on and so forth. And then when they come in on March 7th, their homework from February 8th to bring on March 7th is a functioning current resume that they have. Now, I don't remember off the top of my head, they were not required to apply with a resume, correct?
Some of them have resumes and some don't.
So I remember seeing some and some don't. So that'll be something that that I will give them sort of an anatomy of what a resume looks like. They will come in with a draft. We're hoping that they'll bring their computers in. If not, you could red mark for them, like all of our old professors used to do for us, right? The more red, the better, in a masochistic way. And then at that session, you will actually go over the resume with them. At the end of the resume session on March 7th, we will give a 20 to 30 minute presentation on what makes a diversity statement. So then they can take that lesson with them home, and over the month, either brainstorm or create a very rough draft of what the diversity statement is going to look like. Again, this is an excellent time for you as a mentor to maybe touch point with them, ask them, hey, how's it going? Are you running into any roadblocks? I can't help each of them individually. I was telling Yusuf, I promised my husband I would not take on 33 pro bono clients, even though I really want to. But if you ever have any questions, right, my mentee is having an issue with this, or is this too much to talk about, or is this a red flag, or I'm concerned about something, right? By all means, contact me, contact Derek. We are happy to have a conversation with you and give you an answer. And during the sessions, when you are sort of sent off with them to sort of find a corner and to talk about their draft and to go over it, we'll be also walking around, so we're available to answer any questions for you. But you're essentially going to be our sort of minds and our arms and our legs and our perspective in helping them have one other person looking at the documents that they're producing, to hopefully at the end of the day elevate and really focus in on making sure what they have to say about themselves, their qualifications, their motivations, their passions for being a law student comes across better than what they might be able to do on their own, just by mere experience and time that you've had in the profession and in the educational process. So again, the resume we'll review on March 7th. We'll go into the lesson, or the what to know about the diversity statement. They'll come in April 4th with their draft diversity statement to discuss with you, and then we'll close our hour with a blurb on the personal statement, and then we'll talk a little bit about the addendum, any addendums they might have. So if there's any character and fitness issues, I don't know if you remember, right, but any conduct or academic issues that they need to discuss, any holes or gaps in their experience that they need to explain, maybe explaining why their grades are lower, or it'll be early at this point in time, but maybe talk to them a little bit about what an LSAT addendum might look like. We'll cover all of that beforehand. They go home, work on it, come back the next session to discuss it with you. If you're not there, arrange a time on your own to have that discussed. And then the next part of the session will be talking about what's coming the following week. And then, of course, starting July 11th, it gets into other topics than the actual application. We're doing the diversity statement before the personal statement, and usually, Derek will tell you, we work on that separately. We work on that conversely, right? We always do the personal statement first, and then the diversity statement. And that's because for normal clients or for regular clients, for typical clients, the personal statement's always required and the diversity statement is optional, right? Not every applicant is going to have a diversity statement. I'll give you a perfect example. I had a client last cycle who was adamant about writing a diversity statement because he was or is still, he grew up in sort of like the backwoods of Louisiana, and really thought that brought upon a diversity in him, knowing the diversity of the community that he was in, even though he did not have any socioeconomic disadvantage in his life. He was Caucasian, and had no sort of like identifiable, he was not LGBT, but he felt related to diversity in that way. And that is not, while legitimate and totally fine, for law schools, that's sort of a question on judgment and being very, very careful in how you write that, right? So usually we always talk about the personal statement first, and then we talk about the diversity statement. I'm doing it the other way around because all of our fellows are going to have a diversity statement just by nature of this program. And I'd rather get that story told first and not have it taking up space in the personal statement. So then we can look at the diversity statement, see, wow, this is such a solid, amazing story. What else can we talk about you with regards to your character, your motivations, why law school? And then they sort of have two bites at the apple at telling an admissions committee more about them. So what do you think, not to put you on the spot, Derek, but what do you think about that as far as strategy?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
good. So all that to say is talking about diversity first, I think, is going to be the main story they want to tell. And then the personal statement is going to be this interesting, what else do you want to say about yourself, that is sort of complements and tells more about who you're going to be as a law student one day and as a future lawyer. So that's the only reason why those are turned around. And that's essentially the basis of it. If you know that you are not going to be able to make a session, let me know. I'm going to have a PowerPoint presentation for every session about the lesson of that actual document or that material. And so I can send that to you ahead of time so you're on the same page as your mentee. But other than that, everything that they're going to be learning, you're going to be sort of learning with them and then engaging in that creative writing process, in real time. I thought strategically, again, to go over all of those elements right now and have you at the end of your day on a Thursday before Friday Eve taking notes on these things that you might not exactly touch on for months in advance and then asking you to keep those notes would be unfair. I would think it was unfair if I was in your shoes. And so I figured the best way to do it is just at the time, a little bit before, you'll have that information and then you'll be able to use it when it's fresh in your mind. Any questions on that format or any comments or concerns about kind of leading the charge or working with your mentee on those elements of their application?
I have one question.
Of course.
So the portion where you're going to be giving your lesson in PowerPoint, that is only module 2, or is that the module 1 and 2? So it's like you can only be here for part of the day.
Yeah.
I know 2 is very important, but are there other aspects that you'll be providing those lessons?
So for me, I'm only going to be doing the anatomy of a law school application. Mm-hmm. There are going to be other times where that's actually a good question for you, Cindy. When else would you want the mentors here for other aspects of the modules?
So let me look.
And the good thing is with everything else, if questions come up, right? If you're not here for a module, but they now have a question about client interviewing or about perseverance or building their brand or dressing for success, that's something that can come up in conversations as you meet informally throughout the process. For my purposes for the application, it's only going to be that 10 to 11:15 hour on those days. But Cindy can tell you better if there's any other time that would be good for mentors to be here.
So just going backwards from module 6, if you want to come to that, it's just going to be different lawyers on a panel talking about whether they're a judge or government law. So I don't know if that would be interesting to you. And then in module 5, they're going to be doing mock things. So if you want to come to that, but again, not required. To be honest, Module 4, I think, is going to be super interesting. We have really amazing attorneys who are going, again, that's a panel who are going to be here talking about whether it's immigration. For instance, the sex trafficking one, I actually met through Paula. This is a woman who's a lawyer and started her own nonprofit in San Diego, and all she does is represent sex trafficking victims, which I think would just be such a very intense life. So that's one that will be interesting, but in terms of helping your mentee, that's just something more that's interesting for you, not to help them. Module 3, definitely no, because that is very law student specific. We're going to be having people speak either from USC or Loyola or maybe UC Irvine Law School. So that module, no. So module 2, and then module 1, to be honest, like the grit mindset and the perseverance, and actually in module 3 on July 11th, Thrive, mental health and self-care, to be honest, every person in here could use that. I mean, I'm not making any judgment. I'm just saying, right? We're all full-time lawyers. Hi, Michelle. That one is going to be a really good one. But the grit mindset and perseverance, I think, is going to be really interesting. So if you want to come to those. But in terms of actually, and Angela, this is what I'm assuming you're asking, in terms of helping your mentee, it's the module 2.
I will say, though, and this is something interesting, you can always use this as a touch point for conversation topics when you do meet with them, right? So when you're checking in for month 2, you can kind of go back and be like, oh, I see, right, that on April 1st we talked about, or April 4th, right, the topic was networking, the diversity statement, and then outlining and test anxiety, right? So bring that up. Hey, what'd you learn? Was that helpful? Let me tell you about my experience and what really helped me. Make sure that you somewhere in your notes or your action items write to do this, right? It really helped me. So you can informally mentor them on anything, right? That's the beauty of this, is that they're going to come up with questions that they'll never think to ask during a workshop, and that they'll never think to ask us, but maybe through conversation and organically through, meeting you and what you do, questions are going to come up. By all means, use these topics, which were really meant to be sort of a buffet style bird's eye view on the entire experience. Use that as touch points to see if there's anything else that they want to discuss or talk about or sort of build on with you, and feel free to give your expertise and your perspective, because that's the social capital and the cultural capital they're really, really wanting from you.
So Paula, can you explain from your experience, and Derek, feel free to join in, from your experience doing admissions, and you don't have to go into elements, but what is the purpose of a personal statement, and what is the purpose of a diversity statement in terms of you looking at it as an admissions person?
Sure. So everyone knows the numbers are super important, right? That's what admissions offices in law schools, all ABA law schools are required to report a whole host of information. And in more recent years, right, there's been a huge pull for transparency and making sure that everything is accurate and completely, black and white with regards to what's being reported. The numbers are going to be a huge component of it, right? So median LSAT, and median GPA and what the cumulative GPA and the highest LSAT score that a candidate brings in is really the weight of the application. But the application itself is also critically important because it gives a school an idea of who the living, breathing, dynamic person is that is going to be sitting in that classroom, engaging with the professors and the community of students, and ultimately representing their law school as practicing attorneys and hopefully contributing members of society with their law degrees. And so it's a huge responsibility to not only bring in people with high numbers, which predict their success as students and their abilities to land jobs and help the school with a reputation, but also people who are going to be employable and good, honest, advocates and representatives of the law. And so the personal statement gives law schools an option to, or the alternative to, being able to essentially have an interview without conducting an actual interview. A lot of schools are actually opting now to interview most of their students or a lot of their students, but it's just not still physically possible with the resources that are available at schools. So a personal statement offers a voice to a candidate. It offers a why law school or why law. And you can tell a lot by what a person writes in their personal statement with regards to how motivated they are, how proactive they were in actually researching what they're getting themselves into. I'm talking about the candidates who will sometimes say, I want to be a lawyer to promote justice, versus the person who says, I've in my life or in my experience have seen where justice really does prevail and how someone with a law degree is uniquely positioned to be able to advocate for justice in a court of law where there is actually an opportunity to affect change, right? So there's this difference of I've been watching Law and Order since I was 12 and that's who I want to be, versus I've seen this, I've taken an opportunity to meet with or job shadow or actually intern. I've majored in this, I've done empirical research on this, and this is now something that I want to do. So again, something that grades might not necessarily tell, but a personal statement that is articulate and really has a clear vision as to what they want to do is very, very insightful and helpful for an admissions committee. It also is a great example of writing. So it's a very early writing sample that schools use. What are we if we can't write well as attorneys? And so that is a huge component of the personal statement as well. And it's a judgment call, right? So what are you choosing to write about? You have 2 pages, double spaced space, some schools a little bit less, some schools a little bit more. What are you choosing to represent about yourself as a gateway into this profession that you're claiming you want to go into? So there's lots of elements of what goes into reading a personal statement. And the hours that are spent or should be spent writing it then gets condensed into a 20-minute read by an admissions officer who has just potentially read 40 before the one that they just read, and potentially has 35 more that they have to read before they go home for the night and maybe get a drink with their friends. And so it has to be compelling. It has to be memorable. It has to be well thought out and strategic. It has to be emotion provoking to a degree where when it does go to committee, and a faculty member who is crotchety and maybe a little bit older than us, and may not, I'm being recorded. Just kidding. I love you, faculty. When we have to actually go and fight for a candidate because maybe their numbers are not 100% there, it's a personal statement that makes the difference most of the time. With that also being said, the diversity statement elevates that, right? More so than ever, not only in the legal profession and at firms, but in law schools as well. There's a huge push to diversify the legal profession. We want lawyers who represent and look like and come from the same background as society, right? And as what our clients are and what our clients need. And so there is a huge push to make sure that we are creating a little microcosm of society in law schools, not only for representation, but also for the representation in the diversity of thought and experiences within the classroom, right? We don't want everyone in law school to look like us and have the same experience as us, because then we're not getting the full breadth of what actually goes on outside of the academic scholarship doors in the theory of how we learn the law. So admissions offices are looking for people who represent all different demographics of society and of our communities, and are really looking for diversity statements that can explain that. And it's not just I can tick off all of these demographic points to show that I'm an underrepresented student, a URM, or a student of color, or a minority of color. It's not just the check marks. It's what do you think your identity as a diverse person is going to offer your class? How are you going to affect the discussion or influence the law that you are going to be learning? What can you contribute by way of your own experiences to educate and inform your fellow classmates to have articulated, intelligent, and informed discussions about all aspects that you will be learning about in law? So it's not just only the student of color, but it's the second career mom who finally was able to go back to school. And she's the only one in the classroom who can talk about what it's like to actually transfer a conveyance, because she's the only one old enough to have bought a house in her life, right? And so she brings that little piece of expertise to the conversation. But again, in our standpoint, it's the DACA student who was coming in and talking about her parents coming in and what they had to deal with. It is the...
Can I stop you right there?
Of course.
For a second, just
because that is a really, that's something that we need to talk about. So I know everyone knows what DACA students are, right? I don't want to assume. We do have some DACA students. So in this college access organization I'm involved with, we were very, very careful about not revealing immigration status. This was prior to the current administration even. Now it's even more recording. So for those of you, and again, I will let you know, and actually I think in the applications when you get them, you will know if your mentee is a DACA student because he or she definitely mentions that in their application. That's a big identity for them. How is that handled in applying to law school versus college? Because I can just tell you, I'm not going to say the name of a college, but about 5 or 6 years ago, there was a college back east, a small liberal arts college, who, when they learned that the students' parents, so not the student, but the students' parents were undocumented, there was a lot of consequences to the students that were not good. So that's why I'm a little hyper vigilant about this identifying and sort of outing, for lack of a better word, DACA students. So I just want to know, in terms of admissions, is that something that they should talk about? How should we handle that?
Yeah, it's a really important. Do you want to discuss that at all?
I mean, I would just say I've worked with a number.
Since we're recording, sorry.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the podium.
I've worked with a number of DACA students over the last several years. That's pretty much critical to who they are, and it's such an important part of their story that I think everyone that I've worked with, that's the story that they wanted to tell. I haven't had anyone have, all of them got accepted to schools, basically. So I can't say that every single school, of course, is going to be amenable and open to it, but that's at least been my experience. It's been very positive that most law schools are welcoming and open to it. And I've always advised the people that I've worked with to talk about it if that's the story they want to tell.
Do we know actually which law schools are not looking at it differently?
I don't know of any. Do you?
I have not heard of any that have like strictly not accepted somebody because of that, or have legally not been able to. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I believe it was like 2009 or 2010. There was actually a DACA law student who had graduated law school, passed the bar, and was having problems actually getting sworn in because of the fact that he was an undocumented student or graduate, documented person, and he sued, and I believe he won. And so I think it's illegal to, in any way, not admit or not allow someone to have a professional experience. Again, I'm not using the right terminology because of that status. And I would have to find the case, and I can, and bring it to you. But I don't think that's an issue. I think where it's important for our fellows and for clients in general is to make sure it's the story they want to tell, and to support them in telling that story. Maybe not pushing, or maybe not outing in any way, but making sure it's something that they want to tell. And that might come up with maybe some mental health issues that they want to talk about, right? That can sometimes lead to being a red flag, even though the ADA and law schools, and a part of being an ABA accredited school is there are people at schools for academic success to assist people who might have some mental health issues or emotional issues, but it still sometimes under the radar flies as a red flag for some schools, right? And so anytime there's something that might be sensitive like that you might feel is a potential red flag, just come and talk to us. And that is something that can be sort of advised on a case-by-case basis. I know that just between our colleagues, we've had discussions where people have said, if you don't want to disclose, you don't have to. And candidates were confident enough saying, if a school can't understand that I have this issue and won't be there to support me on the front end, then that's a bullet dodged, right? I don't want to go to a school that is not going to be able to respect me for who I am and provide me the services that I might need as someone who might have these extra issues. And I think kind of the same thing can be said with any other sort of sensitive point of identity that a student might have.
Derek, did you want to add anything to, Paula talking when I was asking about not necessarily the elements of a personal statement, but just what it's for or the diversity?
Yeah, I think a good way to look at the personal statement is it's sort of a cross between a personal essay and a statement of purpose. It's not just one or the other. I think that one of the most common questions that come up is this a why law statement? Do I have to talk about why I want to go to law school? I think that I work with a lot of clients that write personal statements that don't actually mention it directly. But I think that the idea is that after you read it, you want to have the sense that this is a person. You understand why they're going to law school, or at least they have the characteristics and the qualities and the skills that would make for a good lawyer. But most personal statements are really story oriented because, just as Paula was saying, admissions people are reading maybe 50 of these a day, and you never know when yours is going to get read, if it's going to be at the end of the day. And they read so many of the typical cliche, I've always wanted to be a lawyer since I was 10 years old kind of statements. So it really should be story centered, but many of them do. That story often leads to the culmination of, and this is why I want to be a lawyer, or this is what led me here. But like I said, there are some that are just maybe more focused on a theme of perseverance. And so they'll go through a story of their experiences where they persevered over significant obstacles or challenges. And so basically the end of the essay is they're showing why they would make a good attorney, not necessarily addressing directly, here's what I want to do as a lawyer. That doesn't have to be part of it. So I think if you think of it as it's kind of a combination personal essay and statement of purpose, I think that's a good way to look at it and guiding them.
One other question I wanted to ask you too is sometimes the personal statement, and I've had this with clients where it was an incredibly diverse client, and the personal statement was all about their diversity, right? The statement that they wrote was all about their diversity. And then they were sort of thinking, well, now I don't need a diversity statement because my personal statement is sort of my diversity statement. Yeah. And they didn't really think of anything else that they could write about, right? They didn't want the second bite at the apple of another document to talk about themselves. That too is also okay. I encourage, especially with diverse candidates, that now you have this other opportunity to talk about something else. Maybe it's a character trait, or maybe it's something about an element of your diversity that you want to expand on that shows what kind of a lawyer or law student you're going to be, or really talking about the motivation that you bring to the table in a different way. But some of my clients are like, no, I'm happy with this 2-pager. I don't need to say anything else. And that's where I want to go with that. And that's totally fine. The diversity statement that we will write first with our fellows will then just act as that personal statement. But I also sort of feel like we should encourage them to think about what else would you want to write about. And I'm going to provide you with resources and worksheets. Our firm is awesome at creating these for our clients, and I don't think we're going to have a problem sharing them here. That will help them brainstorm. There's a questionnaire that they can ask about all sorts of really interesting introspective questions that I always find when I work with my clients that, oh my gosh, I didn't know this. Like in the 15 times that we've talked, you never mentioned this. Talk to me about that. Let's see where this goes. And sometimes that ends up being an awesome topic for one of their elements that otherwise it would have never gotten out in their application. And it was so key for an admissions committee to know. So all of that is going to be, again, case specific for each mentor and mentee. And we're going to be here to help you throughout that process.
Let me ask you, you mentioned, what are things to avoid? I don't know, I know that's very broad, but are there, like you were saying,
red flags?
You, an admissions counselor could be reading 50 a day.
Right.
You might be the last one. Are there certain things, like cliches or things that our fellows should avoid in putting in there?
A couple of things. One, just related to what Paula was saying, a test for whether there should be a diversity statement and a personal statement is, are they duplicative, right? So you don't want 2 essays that are basically talking about the same thing. So it's got to be new information. So that gets to that point where if the diversity statement really is the most powerful story, and when they go to write the personal statement, they're just sort of, they're really not coming up with new ideas, then just go with that. Because because that is definitely something you don't want to submit extra materials that are just sort of repeating the same themes and ideas. Another one, a common one, is sort of rehashing the resume, right? I mean, that's essentially why we do the resume first, to get all of that. And law schools don't have a one-page resume rule, so it's different than the employment resume. They can actually expand more on activities or things that they've done. So that's a common one, is a lot of people just sort of take you on a resume tour in their personal statement, right?
Versus a personal statement.
So that's one.
I think just generally more soft elements is avoiding any sign of sort of emotional immaturity. And I think that's easier for us to see than sometimes for them to see. And it's just little minor things with, you want them to really express their voice and to talk in their own voice. But if it tends to get a little like snarky or sarcastic, where again, it could be read as maybe disrespectful, just toning that language down a little bit. And the example I always use is, I'm always going to give you the best case scenario of like the most forgiving, amazing, welcoming, engaging admissions committee who wants everybody to come to the school. But I'm also going to play devil's advocate with the crotchety old faculty member, again, love you faculty, who is going to find anything to nitpick and is going to look at what they can use to not admit you, right? And so little things like that where their tone might be maybe like overly aggressive or angry, right? It's okay to show emotion, but you don't want it to go to a place where it's going to turn anyone off or make them think, oh man, is this going to be a really argumentative student in class who's not going to let anyone else talk or take a conversation, so it's taking away from students' ability to learn in an open environment. So little things like that you'll only be able to see once you actually read. And I read all the applications. I was looking for that from day one, and I don't think that's going to be an issue or a problem with our fellows. Speaking of the applications, the fact that you'll get them will be an incredible starting point for those personal statements, because they had to write an essay to apply to this program. And a lot of them were very, very rough beginning stages of what could be an awesome personal and or diversity statement. So that's the good thing, right, is that they already have something written down that you're just going to help sort of chisel and perfect and make into something really strong.
Yeah. Another one that I thought of is it's important that at some point in the essay they move into adulthood, right? Because a lot of people have really interesting stories from their childhood, and there's absolutely a place for them in the essay. Many of them start there to establish theme and give a really nice picture of where they've come from and what are some of the experiences that they've dealt with. But we definitely see lots of essays that sort of stick in childhood or maybe in high school and never move on. That's okay for a college application essay, but for law school, at some point they have to make the transition to, okay, so how has that now translated into who you are today? How has that affected your choices as a student and your goals moving forward?
And then the only thing I would say with that, and to kind of bringing it to a little bit more present day, is if you do just see, I want to go to law school to promote justice, or I want to go to promote equality, and it's a more of an abstract idea, really have that conversation with them to try to figure out if you can make it a little bit more focused, or what is it about justice, or what do they think about when they say justice in their own experiences, and what problem do they hope that they can fix with their law degree. The other thing that we see all the time is, I want to help people. Well, you can help people by being a teacher or a psychologist or an accountant, right? There's so many ways that you can help people. Why with a law degree? And help them parcel that out so an admissions committee knows that this person is coming in with a realistic idea of why they want to do this job, and also that when they do come in, they're not going to be completely bamboozled that it's not law and order from day one. They have to take property and they have to learn about the rule of perpetuities. And they're probably never going to use that as social justice attorneys, right? But they have to learn that, and you don't want them to have that shock when they get into their 1L year. The admissions committee is thinking they don't want a person coming in having that shock, right? So the more you can help them articulate a realistic reason and a why, the more their application will come across as more serious and more strong.
Anything else?
I'm trying to think. Are there any questions? And this is the time to ask these questions because I want to make sure that they get answered before you sit down, with your mentee and start brainstorming.
Yeah, are we going to be expected to give them advice on which law schools to apply to? Like, are they going to come to us and say, here?
That's so funny because Cindy was like, when are we going to talk about like picking law schools? And I was like, they're not even, that's like, we can do that in April. But thank you for asking the question. It's really the conversation that you feel comfortable having. Cindy can talk about that too.
No, I just texted her yesterday to say, because I was looking at the curriculum, are we missing anything? And I'm sure we're going to figure out there's certain things we're missing. And I thought law school, like what law schools they want to apply to. Because that's going to be based, of course, they're going to look at the median LSAT, median GPA. That's going to be a conversation. That'll be an interesting conversation that you'll end up having with some of your mentees. Langston?
Just sort of related. Are law schools accepting GRE scores also?
Some are.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's. Well, I know. I don't think there's any data yet, right, to show the difference between LSAT and GRE.
I would just say the LSAT is still the predominant factor, and so it's been, in our experience, it's been harder for applicants to get admitted if they only have a GRE, and if they have both, then the GRE almost goes away. They're still just going to look at the LSAT. That's still the driving force.
And I think I mentioned last week. I think I mentioned to you. Do you know that the LSAT now is digital? It just started this year. I'm sorry, not this year. This is 2020. In July 2019. So it's not writing. It's all computer, and it's offered 9 times a year. 9 times.
Still taking the highest score and averaging it out.
Highest.
Yeah.
And they might say that they're looking at the average. They'll always look at the other scores. So again, there's like they'll see the other scores. They'll see, okay, well, this person took it 8 times, 9 times, right? There's a judgment call on taking it so many times. But at the end of the day, they're reporting the highest number, and that's what they're taking. That's what
I usually say after 3 or 4. Like,
right.
3, I think, is pretty much now accepted as that's fine. A lot of people take it 3 times. I think 4, you have to have a good reason, and beyond that, it's
right.
Definitely the more selective schools, too, are going to have some doubts about that many tests.
Robin?
Yes, I'm just a little concerned being somebody who was a long time ago that I took an LSAT, because he mentioned something about an LSAT addendum. I have no idea what that is.
And that's totally fine. So an addendum for an LSAT would be if, for whatever reason, they believe that their LSAT score is not predictive of their potential, or they're very, very low compared to the schools that they want to apply to. It's an option that if they have a really good reason for writing
I would have loved that.
They can write it.
Just FYI.
It's short, it's sweet. Not everyone would write one, right? The best addendums are ones that actually explain something critical happened around this time that prevented me from being able to perform as well as I wanted to. I can give you some examples if you want. Not everyone is going to write one. And with our fellows, they won't know what their score is until after you work with them. So it's just something I'm going to mention, that it's an option. It's nothing that you'll actually have to work with. But you bring up a really good point. If you ever have any questions or concerns or anything about that, I will give Cindy, she has my email. You all can have it. Email me anytime you have any questions or concerns about any of this process. I'm not going to volunteer, Derek.
No, I'm happy to.
He literally just moved into town, and I'm like, hey, are you busy? There's this awesome program. You want to play? So I mean, we're available to assist you with any of those questions, so you can best help your fellows in the process. We have so much that we could have talked about within what we do. I mean, when we work with clients, we work with them for sometimes a whole entire year that I just very quickly condensed into 45 minutes in talking with you. So there will be questions. Please feel free to ask us anytime. We're here to support you in supporting the fellows.
Yeah, and the school selection piece, that's something that I'm happy to help with.
Okay.
Because they can usually
your mentee, they will be asking you. They will be. They'll be asking you like where they should apply. Michelle?
I'm already afraid of how this question is going to come off. But are there any limitations to how far this mentorship should go? Like, for example, when we apply for the fellowship, you do tell them this mentorship is limited to the scope of just this, or are there things that you have in mind you don't want it to talk about?
So in terms of time, the fellowship is from now, January, until September, because that's when, that's the last, so as you can see on here, that's when we do moot court. And by the way, I'm sorry, I'm going to do a little sidebar. So I think I told you in my background, I was on the moot court team at Loyola, and I feel like because of that experience is the reason why I ended up at the AG's office in the appeals, writs, and trial section. I feel like it was so beneficial and so directly affected my career path that I believe very strongly in having them do a little scary moot court. It's not going to be mock trial, that's too much. So they and you will be getting a problem to do, and they're actually on those days, August 15th and September 19th, in the Girardi courtroom at Loyola. They're going to be in front of appellate justices and Superior Court judges doing what as close to possible as what happens in the Court of Appeal. I'm not sure, I know some of my colleagues in here have been in the Court of Appeal. I don't know how many of you have, but they're going to make it as real as possible. I know it's going to be a little scary because they're not even law students, but I want them to get that experience. I want them to get the experience of standing up, and first of all, standing up in sort of a mock court and arguing and being able to answer questions from the judge and then go back without skipping a beat, hopefully, to their argument and keep going. I see. So Trina and I were in the same section at the AG's office, and it is frightening, some of the lawyers we have seen in the Court of Appeal, and I don't want that to be our students. So that's another thing you're going to help them with. But to get back to your question, in terms of timing, it's just till September, but and it's related obviously to anything here, right? To helping with their law school application, helping them prepare for moot court. But if you feel like you want to do something further, just let me know. Do you have anything in mind?
I don't.
Okay. Yeah, we're not asking you to, we're not asking you, by the way, to spend money. This is not a mentorship where you want to spend money. We're not asking you to take them to Disneyland.
You can take me to Disney.
You know what I mean? It's very, it's serious, but also have fun. I'm all about fun. So, I'm like, one of the things we're going to do in each of the workshops, which was Paula's suggestion, is for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, literally do something fun. One of the first things she suggested is like blowing bubbles, like literally getting them.